This episode of the Managing Madrid Podcast is brought to you by Intercontinental San Francisco Hotel. Immerse yourself in the heart of the city at the Intercontinental San Francisco Hotel, their prime location in the heart of San Francisco near Moscone Center and Union Square allows you to explore the city's culture and charm while enjoying elegantly appointed rooms and luxurious amenities. Host your next event in their beautifully customizable meeting rooms and ballroom while an elevated dining experience awaits you at their Loose Restaurant and Bar 888. We want to thank the Intercontinental San Francisco Hotel for sponsoring the Managing Madrid Podcast. They hosted an epic podcast for us at their hotel in the Bay Area, and we got a chance to meet a bunch of Madridistas in San Francisco. That was awesome. So thank you for that. Coming up is the post-game show for the win over Celta Vigo. And without further ado, let's introduce the voices of Ray Hudson and Derek Ray. Let's go.
Nice article in the Managing Madrid blog. Wonderful lads that do a great job there. And worth reading about that man there. Karim Benzema needs to rest, and the numbers reveal why.
Times ended up almost looking like a 6-3-1. Some very good writing about that on the Managing Madrid website. First-rate podcast as well. Of course, Fede Valverde was a huge part of the equation.
Hello and welcome to the Managing Madrid Podcast. It is Saturday night, about 1 hour after Real Madrid go into Balaidos and defeat Celta Vigo 4-1 away from home and start La Liga with a quick 6 points. 2 games, 2 wins, both away from home. Solid start to La Liga, and we got a lot to discuss. So joining me, Kiyan, Sobhani, tonight is Arvind. How are you?
Doing well.
That's it? That's all you got for me?
Well.
Nothing like, I really enjoyed this Vinicius skill. I enjoyed Modric's performance. Tchouameni stepped up. Nothing.
I feel like I enjoyed a lot of things in that second half, but I feel like tonight's your night after I saw you post that Tchouameni chant video you did. That's how I expected you to start the podcast.
Oh, okay. So maybe I'll put that clip at some point at the end of the podcast or something. But that was actually from yesterday's Instagram story, and Lucas screen grabbed it and posted on his Twitter. And now it might just turn into a meme. I'm not sure. Every time Tchouameni does something, we'll post it. It kind of just is on the back of so many people asking, and look, I don't need to rehash it. Me, you, Sid, and Jose broke this down extensively on the Casemiro Emergency Podcast. But just as the fact that there's so many people who completely disregarded Tchouameni as even an option. The options they listed were okay, what do we do now? Do we put Alaba there? Do we put Camavinga there? Do we put Fede Valverde there? Do we put Cruz there? And so that video was kind of a response to one of those questions, and I was just basically, my brain was about to pop yesterday, just going through and answering the Casemiro questions on Instagram stories. So that's from that. But anyways, that's that. Tchouameni had a great game, but I'm curious to know where you want to start, Om. It's kind of in a way, classic Real Madrid of late, where first half is a little bit underwhelming, but the gears they can go to at certain points due to individual quality, but also the defensive structure has improved, I thought, over the last couple games, or maybe my prediction was that the defense will improve this season. I thought we've been pretty good in that department, all things considered. And also just the 5 subs, man, no matter who comes in the second half, especially when you're up 3-4-1 at that point and you see Rudiger coming in to lock things up, then you got just no matter what combination of 5 players we bring in the second half, it's enough to ice it. So that's the situation we're in now. But I'm curious to know where you want to start with this one.
I mean, we can get the boring stuff from the first half off the table. I mean, it was just a really it did kind of feel like typical Real Madrid in a way. The first half is kind of underwhelming, and then maybe we do something at the end of the first to lift spirits, but really things take off in the second. Honestly, the first 20-25 minutes, I was just pretty disappointed with the quality of play from both sides. It just felt like nothing much was really happening, and from Celta's point of view, not having Brais Mendes, not Denis Suarez, I think big blows. Brais Mendes obviously having gone to Real Sociedad, I'm really interested to see how Celta cope this season and what they look like, because Jose and I were talking about them after the game, and I was talking about they didn't look like the usual Celta throughout the course of 90 minutes, right? In the sense that they're usually so vertical, the like tempo that they play at is so high, and even though we like get the results versus them, it's never that comfortable, and we always end up kind of looking sort of exposed in a way. And I'll get to maybe some things from Real Madrid's perspective as to why that was the case. It just didn't feel like, wow, this is the Celta I'm used to, and it just felt like everything was at a much more considered pace. And yeah, that was a bit strange to see. And then yeah, Real Madrid were starting off very slowly. I think obviously we got a lot better in the second half, and goals ended up not being a problem. But I think when you see the theme of how third and the transition-based nature of the last two goals, like I really feel like we were missing Kroos to an extent in terms of our possession game, right? Like going like 25 minutes or so, we're like just it's a random penalty, right? A random handball from a set piece that leads to the penalty. And also that was the case from Celta, right? Like there was just nothing much going. It felt like we needed a player who could really establish a proper rhythm over the game and get Real Madrid going in some kind of way that actually made sense, right? And I think in these sorts of moments, right, this is where, like, with Kroos, it's easier when you don't happen to see what you're missing and you're taking for granted, right? Again, this idea that this is it, Kroos is, his position is on, like, he does things we don't need. Like, I don't really buy that. I will say, though, going back to this idea of Celta not looking by themselves, I think maybe like 15 to 20% of it had to do with the fact that Camavinga and Tchouameni were the two defensive players who were the ones who had to keep track of like the double number 10 type thing that Celta do, like this 4-2-2 thing. And, they're wide, kind of like attacking midfielders or whatever, however you want to call it, Servi and Oscar Rodriguez, like they didn't really get into the type of areas you associate with Celta. And part of that is they're not Brais Mendes, they're not Denis Suarez. But the other part of that is I just thought Tchouameni and Camavinga did a really sharp job of, both looking at each other and saying, all right, these are the major threats. This is the way Celta likes to play. Let's shut them down. And as kind of a reaction to that, sometimes players are going to go wide to get space to receive the ball. And when that happens with Celta, the entire way they play is destroyed. So I'm assuming a lot of this podcast, especially when we get to the second half, is just going to be Tchouameni, Camavinga stuff. So that I'll just keep talking about them throughout the podcast. But that was kind of the first thing I really noticed about them. But yeah, I mean, in terms of like the pressing structure, because I think in our deeper block, the fact that Tchouameni and Camavinga were so, they paid attention to everything, it looked quite nice. I don't know. I still saw like mostly the same things I see with the press, right? Like one particular sequence where, was it like the 35th minute or something? Vinny steps up, press with the front two. Mendy has so much space to cover to get to the right back. They find an easy option and then they play in behind. And like the right back was kind of always there. And I don't think that's really going to change. I think the fact that we have better defensive personnel will just lead to, better execution over time. But like, for me, the mechanics are kind of flawed and whatever. Like I've accepted it at this point. That's just Real Madrid under Ancelotti. The truth is that we're good enough most of the time for it not to really matter. I think that was the case today, although we really only saw Real Madrid's like true superiority come in the second half. So yeah, that should kick things off for you, I think.
it's that every time you start the podcast with something like that, which is like touches on a million things, and you hand it off to me, I never know what to do because I'm just like, okay, do I discuss this part of what he said or this part? And I'm not really sure where to take off, but I'll take off on like the last thing you said.
Grant Little feels.
What's that?
On Las Blancas when I'm the one. Imagine how Grant Little feels on Las Blancas when I'm the one running the show. You should be grateful that at least you have some control here.
I sympathize with you, Grant and Yash. I'm sorry that happens to you regularly. So I'll go with the last thing that you said, and that was you touched on the press. And I think you saw like there were clear signs of intent with the press to try to win the ball high up the pitch. And like there was one in the 15th minute where we actually ultimately ended up winning the ball, but there was a clear moment of confusion. It's in the 15th minute. I think it's like you can clearly see Vinicius where there's a complete open passing lane open for Celta coming out of the back, and he doesn't know where to go exactly. And there's just a moment of confusion that I thought summarized the Ancelotti pressing structure in general the last year and a half or so, whatever, is that there's just a lack of cohesiveness. Now, I know, like, so I feel like might be a skeptic in terms of can we figure this out or not. And obviously there's a big discussion to be had now that I think is more legitimate even than it was 48 hours ago since we had Casemiro in the team, where, you know, we had this whole discussion about if Kroos is going to be an anchor, and it's not something we necessarily entertain every game, but given that Carlo Ancelotti has talked about it in the press conference and sees him playing that role really well, and also brought up the fact that in the 2014-2015 season, they won 22 games in a row with him there. And then we discussed as a group yesterday that, well, if you're going to do that, you're going to want to press and control more like you did in 14-15 and not rely on transition defense with Kroos as your anchor. And and so the reason I bring this up is that because of that, we theorize that maybe the press is going to be a real thing this year and not something that was put on the back burner like last season. So you're skeptical, I think, of, like, I don't know, using your own words, the mechanics of it and how each piece of the puzzle kind of fits together and forms a synergistic web of defensive structure that actually doesn't get its lines exposed and doesn't get bypassed easily with one or two passes. I think maybe just to be more optimistic about it, I guess, when I was going back last season, the beginning of last season, I was writing a column in the summer, and I went back and watched the early games from last season when Ancelotti was pressing. They were doing it at such a high volume that in between all of the terrible pressing sequences, there was always less than a handful of really good ones. That's just sheer math, right? You basically do enough things, and some of the time it'll just be really good. And I think maybe the case for it to be better this year, if they do decide to do more pressing and be a bit more aggressive, is do you think the team now is more cohesive than it was back then in the early stages? I mean, that team featured Bale and Hazard on the wings earlier in the season, and now you have maybe younger legs in midfield. Maybe the players are more familiar with Ancelotti. They kind of have a better idea of how this would work. Does that part of it give you any more optimism, or are you still skeptical about the whole thing?
I mean, I think based on the fact that Ancelotti has his lineup decided, based on the fact that we have more hardworking defensive talent in the team. I mean, look, the period when we had Hazard and Bale in the 11 doing the press was the worst, right? That was when it was most untenable. And I don't think we're ever going to get to that point where it's just truly an embarrassing 4 to 5 games where oh my God, this is amateurish. But unless the scheme itself changes, I don't think we're going to get to the point where we're wow, this is just buttoned up and this is exactly how we want to see it. It's, tactically perfect. I just think the way we go about it is flawed, right? And the way we do it is basically the same every time, right? For whatever reason, Vinicius is the one who comes to form the front two, which leaves the fullback free, which someone has to adjust to that. Usually it's Mendy coming over, and that creates a domino effect where you just have to execute so perfectly on that left-hand side to prevent things from being opened up that it just makes things tougher. Maybe Carlo has a good reason for doing that, and there's some reality in terms of who wants to do what work and who doesn't that I'm not aware of. But the way Zidane locked it down in his final years was someone steps up from midfield to join Benzema, right? Either it was Modric or Kroos, and it was just more stable, right? You theoretically left a free man in midfield, but you cover shadow that option. All the fullbacks, you have access to them at all times, and it was just easier to manage. The thing is, Carlo has pressed like that before in other systems, so I don't know why that's never happened at Real Madrid. Maybe I can point out 2 games last season where we did that, but otherwise, it's always this thing with Vinicius. If that doesn't change, to me, there's just a ceiling to how good it can get, because I just think it's a fundamental flaw with the scheme, and it just relies on execution. That could be variable, right? There were some games, especially in spurts in the Champions League, where everyone was just so locked in, and it just came together, right? Versus Chelsea was the main one in the first leg, right? So, yeah, I mean, that's just how I feel about it. And look, I don't mean to keep bringing it up again and again. look, when it affects things in the game, we'll mention it. But like, I'm at a place where I'm like, this is what it is. I don't think the scheme will change. It's just how much does it hinder us? And like, look, in the aggregate, in most cases, we're so talented. And, by adding Tchouameni and having Camavinga on the lineup, it's just the case that we can probably live with like 3 to 4 breakdowns and get away with it. And whatever happens, from all other parts of our game is more impactful. And so like, yeah, that's just where I'm at the moment.
Let's see. I mean, I think what does give me a little bit of hope is that in the Champions League last season, the second half, when Ancelotti made the subs, brought on those younger legs, the pressing actually did improve. And you could say that there's definitely a correlation there also with that being at the end of the game, younger legs coming in, the opposing team has been pressing all game. Maybe they've gotten tired, so it could be a bit of both. But we'll see where it goes. But you also mentioned
the times when it did work was when Camavinga came over and saved it, and I don't think that's something Kroos could have done. I mean, I think to me that's if you want to go the positive direction, it's that Camavinga is going to have a larger role this season, and if he's going to be playing one of the interior roles, we literally don't have a better defensive presence, and so he can just stitch things together and make things work.
So on that note, that's a great segue, because the other big theme in this game was the fact that Tchouameni and Camavinga were pretty awesome. Like, I could actually, if I wanted to, I could probably nitpick a couple things that Tchouameni didn't do so well. I did think like maybe he's the kind of player who kind of grew into the game. And wow, shocking! A player getting more comfortable in his scheme looks better. It's a shocking theory, I know, but he did look better as the half wore on, but also as the game wore on. And I think maybe early on, Celta to me rightfully wanted to put him under pressure to see how he would do. I mean, spotlights on him he's a younger guy. Everyone's looking at him to be the Casemiro heir, and I think Celta were right to try to make him as comfortable as they could. There were maybe a couple times he gives the ball away under pressure, but generally speaking, I thought he was pretty calm. And funny enough, it was more our right wing that was giving the ball away under pressure. It was Carvajal and Fede Valverde. And Fede Valverde had one of the weirdest games I can ever remember from him. It's probably his weirdest game ever. We'll get into that. But Tchouameni defensively read everything really well. He was intercepting the play. He was covering in both half spaces. He was there in zone 14. He was winning the ball, which is something he's been really good at in his entire young career in France. And on top of that, he was actually putting nice balls into the box. He had 3 key passes at halftime. I think it ended up still being a game high by the end of it. And I thought the other thing he did really well with Camavinga in particular, who, as you noted, was good defensively. Camavinga also, like the way they're stationed together, Tchouameni can look up with 1 or 2 passes and play that vertical pass to Camavinga, who's right in front of him, positioned between the lines perfectly. And I think that synergy between those two has looked good so far, and I'm excited about it moving forward. I think it's early signs, but there is a bit of a glimpse into the future with something that we had hoped for between those two moving forward, that I think we kind of got a glimpse of it today.
Yeah, and I think a glimpse of the future is the right word, right phrase, because like with that final goal, it's Camavinga coming over, and I don't even know how to describe what he did, but like hooking the ball away somehow. Like he made a tackle like skillful as hell, and Tchouameni comes over, and both of them together clean it up, launch the counterattack, and off goes Vinicius, and Benzema like slips or something. I don't know what happened, and then Fede ends up scoring, which just makes his performance even funnier, considering the way he played beforehand. But I think it's not just a glimpse of what Camavinga and Tchouameni can provide, but also a glimpse of the direction of where the team might be going, which I just think is more transition-oriented. Like, I think it was very obvious, especially in the first half, we did miss a lot of Kroos, the purpose that Kroos gives us in a possession. And even in the second half, it's not like we were suddenly, like, the way we were playing in slow build-up was, like, dramatically different or more improved. Celta got more desperate. They came on to us. Tchouameni and Camavinga clean up. I mean, even the third goal, right? It's with Tchouameni coming into the box. Great, like, I guess, interception, and then helps us play out. And, Modric finds Vinny with a beautiful ball. I don't really know what Celta were doing from a rest defense perspective and how it got so open, but turnover. Modric plays the pass. Both goals, Mini going in behind, and I think that's the path forward, right? Because at a certain point, there will be a midfield without Kroos, there will be a midfield without Modric, and sure, maybe we want another player to add a different kind of balance there. But with Tchouameni and Camavinga playing together, with the talent that we have up front, like Vinicius, with someone like Fede or even Rodrigo on the side, this is a team that just is built for offensive transition above anything else. So, yeah, I mean, it was a little glimpse into the future. It was a nice glimpse into the future. It was a glimpse into kind of like a little bit of a different way of winning. It's not like we've never scored counterattack goals with Modric and Kroos in the team, but we didn't necessarily control the game much in this one, which was a little weird, but we just were lethal, right? I mean, we were buttoned up when we were in our deeper block. Camavinga and Tchouameni took care of everything, and then Modric kind of did his thing on the other end.
Yeah, and to be quite honest, I don't know how much I care about quote-unquote not being in control of a game like this, because it still felt comfortable and it felt professional. And I think it's going to be hard to be in control at all times throughout a league title winning campaign. And you just got to grind it out sometimes. And I thought, like, once you got past a certain threshold, I mean, to me, it was, as you said, neither team was really playing particularly well in the first half. What gave us a little bit of breathing room was the penalty, which, by the way, Tchouameni, nice sleep on that set piece. He rises and the ball comes down and the Alaba shot is off Tapia's arm. So that gave us a lifeline. Not a lifeline, it's not the right word. It's more like just breathing room in a game that was kind of ugly to start. So that gives us a little bit of a good start to the game. And then obviously the equalizer with Militao. And then after that, I thought where the game turned was that moment of Modric transcendance, which was the goal. And I think once that happened, you really started to see, not that you needed to see it, but you start to see the talent gap between the two teams, just like you did against Almeria. There's just a gear that we can go to. There's an individual brilliance that we can go to, and there's just a bunch of depth we can go to in the second half. And I think teams just kind of get deflated. Like, imagine like you're down 3-1. It was 3-1 it was 4-1 at that point. I think it was 4-1. You're down 4-1, and then Rudiger comes in to like protect the back line. Like, how do you even react to that? That's got to be like demoralizing to see that. And I think that's hard for teams. And I don't know what Celta were doing on like any of the goals they conceded, but they just opened up and they were getting worse defensively as the game wore on. That it just opened up for us in transition. And quite frankly, I think 4-1 is a fair result. And I also think it could have been worse than that for Celta, to be quite honest, but it wasn't. But do we want to talk about the Militao handball?
I mean, I don't know what to say about it other than ask what was he doing. I don't understand.
I don't understand why you have to have your arm there when you're leaping. Is my question for sure. Yeah, I don't know. That's all I have to say about it too. I don't know if I necessarily want to jump on the Militao error-prone bandwagon, but it's kind of true that he does leave us with these silly mistakes and cost us goals throughout the season. So it is a problem. But Rudiger is just, to me, a starter. I don't even know how you can spin it any other way. Maybe it's just a way of easing him into the lineup or whatever. But so that's part of that. Yeah, go ahead. You want to jump in?
Well, yeah, maybe the deal is that every time Rudiger doesn't start, he gets to play like 10 minutes at right back. And like, that's just written into his contract and that's how he accepts it. Like, you kept saying like Rudiger came on to button things up, which like, I wouldn't say that's wrong, but like when Rudiger came on, like he was so offensive.
It was like he letting go of a raging bull who was locked up. He just kind of just went out there. He's like, I'm just going nuts right now. That's not that.
He's so funny, man.
That sequence that led to the last penalty, it was funny, but it also was incredible. Like, it was really remarkable. Like, it was just the way he advanced the ball up the field and his ball progression, and then he passes, and then I think it's Fede who passes the through ball to him again, right? And he latches onto that. I mean, it's just, he's an incredible player, man. He's really great.
Yeah.
Can you describe the Modric goal, or is it beyond words? You want to take a crack?
I mean, just it amazes me how Modric gets separation for those shots when like there's not really any physical superiority to be had, right? And like people like will often say, well, you don't really need it. I mean, it's not true. If you look at the players who get separation more than anyone else, like really explosive. They're Vinicius Jr., they're Kylian Mbappe, they're prime Lionel Messi, whatever, right? And Modric, especially at this stage in his career, like he's not getting a step on anyone. And the fact that he just is always able to is amazing to me. And it's really just about the shoulder drop. On this occasion, it was really dramatic because I think it was Tapia, right? Just like fucking like falls, just like his legs collapse and Modric gets him and that's how he opens up. But a lot of times he has to do it 3-4 times to like gain tiny minuscule advantages to finally be able to open up and go for it. And then when he does, like it's just pure technique, man. That's my favorite type of long range strike where it looks like it's just about to kiss the post and then it just curls inside and only hits net, just the side of the net. And I don't know why like that particular type of goal is so aesthetic to me. I mean, usually it's like top corner or going off the crossbar in. I mean, obviously those are nice to see, but that particular one, it's just like, I don't know, maybe it just says something about just how accurate the strike ended up being. But that was a nice way to kind of wake me up and like wake everyone up from a match up until that point, which was kind of like, like, oh, this feels, I felt like, where's the Kiyan? How's everyone doing tweet coming? And
I think it came
Modric
before
scores
that
goal.
Yeah.
Okay.
It definitely came before that goal. It's his trademark, right? It's the shoulder drop, fake shot, keep cutting, and then curl it near post. And this might have been the best one he's done, unless my memory's not serving me right. Like, obviously, the Manchester United one is the de facto most important one. But this one was more spectacular to me because of just the way it dips and the way he just dropped that poor Tapia guy. It was just really incredible. And he just, like, throughout the game, it wasn't just like a moment of individual brilliance from Modric. He set the tempo of this game. Awesome performance from him. The assist to Vinicius, who, by the way, we should probably talk about now. I did want to kind of introduce Vinicius into this podcast in a different way. The continuing theme of him being alone on the left flank. I was a little bit surprised when I was checking the data after the game and realized that Ferland Mendy had 82 touches, which was the second most of anyone on the team. And I'm curious to know what your notes on Mendy were, because to me that was like a very quiet 82 touches. Like, I didn't really notice him doing much because my analysis of what was happening was that Vinicius was having a great game, but he was again by himself. And a lot of onus on his shoulders again to like beat one or two players and make something work. And obviously, he got the better of Hugo Mayo and everyone else was on that wing. And Celta threw multiple bodies at him. But I'm curious to know what your Mendy notes were in this game. And then we can use that as a segue to talk about Vinicius.
Yeah, I don't really have much. I mean, there was one moment where coming out of the press, like he had a nice ball carrying action, like hit like kind of in his classic way, takes a big touch, beats the challenge, went out of it, and we were able to like retain possession. But I don't know if it's interesting, but if you look at his heat map, like it's split into like two clear zones, like one huge, kind of blotch in his own half, and then another decently sized blotch, like leading up box, but nothing actually going like on the overlap or into the box or anything. So it's almost like it's just completely like siloed into like maybe like some entry into the final third, going back to the defensive third. And I just think that was like a factor of Real Madrid getting more and more dominant over the game. Carvajal's is even more interesting because he has like barely any touches in like in the opposition half. It's way more sporadic, and like his game was just so weird. I don't even know what to say about it. I don't know what was happening on the right flank. Maybe like there was some chemical wafting up from the grass that just made that entire flank like so weird. But yeah, I mean, Vinicius, man, like I almost felt like he wasn't even taking the game seriously. Like, obviously that's not true, but like I just got that impression because like every touch had to be like the most amazing trick you'd ever seen. Like I was like, does he like respect like Celta's defenders? What's going on here? And like one of the times it was actually leading to like lost possession. I was like mildly getting annoyed. I was like, all right, Vinicius, like I know you're insanely good, but like it's not like the team is playing that well. He just kept doing his thing, trying every trick in the book. And so of course, when Modric ends up playing him in, he can't go past the keeper normally. He has to do a little imitation of a Ronaldo Nazario and do a step over and follow it. And it was a little different because he follows the step over and goes that way. But it was in the same spirit as he talked about the press conference afterwards. And he finishes. I mean, overall, like another performance where when you just go back and just start looking at the goals, like Vinny is just involved in them. He's involved in the danger moments. And I do think he's gotten to a point where his confidence is so high that he's like, well, I need to entertain as well. This is too easy for me. Like, let's up the challenge. Let's move the sliders up and let's make this more difficult for me.
Yeah, well, when you said he wasn't taking it seriously, I know exactly what you meant. It's in a good way. It meant that he was out of his head. He was playing within the flow of the game. Naturally, the game was coming to him. He wasn't forcing anything, and everything was decisive. Like he wasn't dabbling on the ball. He was quick to cut in and shoot. His defending on the flank was really good. That should be noted too. Like he was actually working really hard defensively on the wing, and everything was just flowing effortlessly for him. You mentioned and also obviously the goal, that the amount of confidence he had on the breakaway to do the Nazario special. It's just the step over and cut outside and go around the keeper. The right flank is interesting because it is weird. I think maybe Carvajal and Fede had something in their water before the game because they were giving the ball away. And Fede has like a clear before and after. Before the goal, I don't know what he's doing, and the free kick was hilarious. And I'm not really sure if I've ever seen a free kick like that. A lot of theories about why he hit it like that. There's a common theory that I actually buy into is that maybe he was just giving a tribute to Casemiro, and it was passing to Casemiro's ghost in the anchor role. That's one thing I'll ride with, and then he scores a beautiful one-touch goal, and he caps it, and then he seems to just all of a sudden kick into gear and become Fede again. So there's that. But one thing I noted that was interesting, because a lot of comments that I saw was that we don't do anything on the right wing. We don't use it, like we don't switch it. It doesn't go there. Like everything is on the left. It's predictable. And I took note of something that happened in the 55th minute, where Benzema does this thing where he doesn't do that often, but he sometimes just goes to the right and combines with the right winger. And he did this 1-2 movement with Fede, and all of a sudden we got in the box in the right wing. And that was like the first time that Fede had anyone to link up with in the half space. And naturally, because Benzema has always his whole career just been towards the left, I think that's part of the reason why our play is so much to the left, other than the fact that our left winger is more talented than our right winger. But that's kind of been the case. So I don't know if you had any thoughts about that, just the way we funnel possession on one side. Is there a way to get more out of the right wing, etc.?
I think it's always going to be like that until we have the talent kind of equalize. And it makes it even harder when Fede is out there because he might get a lot of on-ball touches out there at times, but like off ball, he tends to roam inside. He tends to be an auxiliary central midfielder, and that can leave Carvajal as the only guy out on the flank, where it just leaves like an underload out there, right? And I think it improves when Rodrigo comes back, and I don't know exactly how he slots into the rotation right now, because it's a bit weird, right? Because Carlos is going to start the Champions League final in the Super Cup, and then he had a game of rotations. And then Rodrigo's injured. And so I don't know exactly how he sees him. My assumption was he was going to be the starting right winger, but it's been all Fede so far. But if Rodrigo comes back, I think he just offers more as a true right winger that would attract the ball to that side. But it's just always going to be this way when Vinicius and Benzema is on that side. And when Kroos comes back, it's going to be even more biased to the left again because he conducts everything. I think, though, specifically with this game, especially as we went into the second half, Camavinga started taking over in terms of a lot of his passing sequences. I mean, Celta really committed to the press, and Camavinga started to look so good that made our play go to the left more often because he was really finding a synergy. I mean, I don't know, we can talk about Camavinga after this if you want, but that's just kind of how I see the left-sided bias. And as long as we have this kind of core talent that we do, I just think that's kind of how it's always going to be.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be like that for as long as I think Benzema's in the team at the very least. But certainly, like, if Rodrigo comes back, it's a different dynamic as well. And when he comes back, it'll change. In terms of Camavinga, I don't really. I mean, I think I've said what I need to say about Camavinga, in that he was great combining with Tchouameni in the build-up, but also between those two, the amount of ground they covered, the tackling was great from both of them. There was that one moment in the second half. One sec. I think my son Luka really wants to say hi because he's tapping my face in the podcast. Luka, do you want to say hi? Say it.
Hi.
Say Hala Madrid.
Hello, Madrid.
Okay, thank you. All right. So the one thing I will say about
Baba.
yeah,
How do you play this?
I don't know. You have to do that on your own. You can play. So the thing about Camavinga too, that second half. Remember that risky pass from Courtois? I think it was. Let me look it up. 47th minute, when Courtois plays that risky vertical pass to Camavinga, and Camavinga slips, and he can't get to, but then he recovers really well. I think there was a chance there that Celta could have almost scored an empty net there. That was a really good recovery from him to save that sequence. But yeah, what else do you have in Camavinga?
Yeah, I mean, just more general points, really. And I'm like always going to be so shameless with this, but like using any performance like this to vindicate my argument that this is where he should be playing as like an interior. Like, I just think it frees him up, just frees him up to do all the things he's so good at, right? When you play him at a single pivot or anywhere else, like, you can tell like he just has to take a beat to try to figure out everything that he's doing. And it's just not all clicking for him because not all the tools are quite there. What I saw as he grew into the game was a guy who was just doing everything so instinctively. This may have been his most instinctive performance as a starter for Real Madrid in terms of the completeness of his game. Obviously, we've seen him, score goals and stuff like that. But in terms of minute-to-minute influence, this is where I think you get the best out of Camavinga. And there's really two things here. One, I really started to enjoy as Celta started pressing higher, the way it's really like actually like quite surprising to me how quickly Camavinga and Tchouameni have managed to pick up the synergy. But when they were building up deep, Tchouameni would take the right, Camavinga would drop off and just be so aware of those who are coming to press behind him and play these little flicks to Mendy out wide, just be ready to get us out of the press so quickly. The second part of it that I liked is, and this is something that not all players can do because one, they might not have the awareness, two, they might not have technique, and three, they physically just aren't able to do it because it needs to happen so fast, is that when he plays that first pass deep receiving versus the press, almost always he turns, he's away, moving forward, looking to take the space behind the player he just attracted. And that needs to happen so quickly because if you're just doing that as a player who doesn't have the mobility, you're destroying a short build-up option, right? You're ruining like a rigidity in the structure that provides security. And for a combination down the field, that will disappear and it makes no sense. Camavinga is able to do it in tune, instinctively, that when he does it, it's just like, it just shreds, a press in one move. Obviously, Celta were not pressing particularly well, but this is something that Camavinga has done, consistently throughout his short career. And he's just so good at it. Like, super aware of who's behind him, play that first time pass, swivel, make the move in behind, and then, foment combinations down the wing, maybe carry the ball forward, maybe like 3 or 4 times in the second half where it just looked really nice. And the way he moves up and down the half space, it's like where he was born, like, I don't know if you saw that tweet about like, was it Espanyol? Like, the newborn baby was born or something, and like I don't know if he was born in the stadium emergency or like they brought him to the stadium at like his first game. It was like Camavinga was just born, I don't know in what stadium, but he was born on the half space of a pitch because he just understands how to move and manipulate that area of the pitch just so well, which is pretty rare for a young player because it's a hard place to be because you don't have the comfort of the touchline and knowing that's your limit. You're not in the center where everything is in front of you. You're always playing like on the half turn, and that's where he's super comfortable. So yeah, already like said way too much about a singular performance, but as I said, I'm going to be shameless about this.
No, this is I'm completely on board with the shamelessness of this. If it's Camavinga praise, we can go. Like, there's no time limit on it. Maybe we have to pace ourselves, but you know me, I love Camavinga so much that I think this is all great. It was an excellent monologue. I do think the movement with the half space, there is a certain instinctual, natural, cerebral understanding that he has of the game, of how to break lines on and off the ball. And it was apparent right away that first, remember that pass against Inter Milan where he had that one-touch pass? I think it was whoever scored the ball in the box. I'm not sure. I don't remember who it was, but yeah, he was just in that space, ready to receive the ball, and he knew exactly where he needed to be. And he has the talent, he has the IQ, he has everything. One thing that Ancelotti said that was interesting after the game, not directly related about Camavinga, but Tchouameni, this was interesting because after the Almeria game, Ancelotti said that this was not the Tchouameni and Camavinga he had seen in training. And today, after this game, he said that, quote, Tchouameni has different qualities to Casemiro, but today he played very well. He showed what he has been showing in training. And then he said without the ball, he defended well. He did well defensively with Modric and Camavinga. So one of the criticisms that Ancelotti had after the Almeria game that in yesterday's press conference before this game, he said that Tchouameni needs to improve his positioning. So he was high praise of Tchouameni's positioning today off the ball. So I'm just curious to know if you have had anything to add on that part of it.
Yeah, since I haven't really talked about what I thought about Tchouameni's point as a whole, I guess I'll just use that to do that. I mean, I guess positionally he was better because he was just better than he was versus Almeria. The weird thing, though, with his performance is I wasn't as blown away by it as everyone else, and the reason being because this is what I expect his normal level to be. I thought it was a very good performance. It's just that to me, it wasn't so much of a shock. I mean, I don't know why it was a shock to people, or why there was necessarily that reaction, probably because of everything that had gone into the discourse coming into that one. But to me, it was just like, not necessarily shrug my shoulders, but just sit there contentedly and be like, yeah, that's what Tchouameni can do. This is who I expect him to be. So I wouldn't say how he played didn't impress me, but it didn't impress me out of the ordinary. What did impress me out of the ordinary was the fact that he did what he did under mass pressure, right? Because of the Almeria game, but also the fact that Casemiro had left. And if he had dropped a 6 out of 10 performance, which, not a disaster class, but not particularly good, who would have eaten him alive? This fan base is brutal, right? That's what happened. Instead, it was an 8 out of 10, 8.5 out of 10 performance, and he came out of it. And not to be cliched, but that's a little bit of that Real Madrid mentality or Real Madrid DNA, as you might call it. It's not an easy thing to do, and we'll see how it scales across the entire season. But it's impressive that we saw that in one game under all of that pressure. And that's definitely a good sign. We know his quality, but what's his mentality like? And, our first little insight into it in terms of his on-pitch play was very positive.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's really true. So my perspective is pretty similar to that in that I think the fan base was looking to come up with some narrative after this regardless. And be it fair or unfair, that is kind of how it works here. And myself, personally, I had decided, obviously, I wouldn't judge him on even this game. I may not judge him until Christmas, to be honest with you. But I think despite that, despite the fact that I decided I wouldn't have judged him, I had decided that if he were able to show us that his mentality was as strong as advertised in everything he said in the press conferences about Michael Jordan is his hero, Kobe Bryant is his hero, etc. He learns from their mentality. He's a winner. He wants to improve every day, all that stuff, blah, blah, blah. If he actually backs that up and does cope with the unsurmounting pressure right now with Casemiro gone and everything falling on his shoulders, if he does come out of that unscathed and plays really well, then that's going to be a green flag for me. And he did it. And I think that was really impressive to me. And as we mentioned, we did that podcast yesterday. And we brought up examples of so many examples in Real Madrid's history where young players were thrown into the fire. And despite them, some of them maybe taking a while, but some of them right away, they showed us what they have. Raul, Vinicius, and Quinta de Buiter are great examples of this. So I wanted to see how he would react to that pressure, and I thought he passed that test. All right. What else do we want to talk about today? What else do we got? Anything
I
standing
don't know
out
if I'd
to you?
say Benzema was. I don't know if Benzema was quiet because he did have this at the end and he was weirdly involved in the fourth goal, but that wasn't like vintage Benzema really. I mean, I didn't feel like he's allowed these types of games, but I didn't feel like he was particularly great today.
He had 5
That's all
shots
I have to
today.
say about it.
Yeah, he had 5 shots today. He's had 12 shots in the past 2 games combined. In, I think, normal situations, he would have had... He has 1 goal and it's from a penalty. I think he would have had like 3 goals by now if this was a normal Benzema, like just occurrence where he's outperforming his XG. He had 3 really great chances today. He could have had a second penalty, which he delegated to Hazard. By the way, where are you on that? Is that... There's people kind of on both sides of the fence on this one. Was it a bad idea to delegate it to Benzema?
You mean delegate the penalty to Hazard?
Or sorry, to Hazard? Yeah. I totally messed that up.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if bad idea. I mean, you're up 4-1. It doesn't really matter, right? And and head-to-head, still the differentiator in La Liga. I should probably know that. I don't know if they changed it to goal difference recently, but look, clearly, if you see him as a relevant guy, and Ancelotti said Hazard will be the false 9 back up to Benzema, then yeah, it probably is a good idea to give it to him. I mean, Ronaldo did it in the 17-18 season. 2 of his 5 league goals in 17-18 were penalties that Ronaldo gave to him at the end of the season. It's just a shame that he couldn't put it away. That's the thing. It's a good idea if it works, and now it's just made everything worse now that he's missed. That's the only thing that could have dropped his confidence more. And at this point, I mean, I don't know. I don't know how much patience I have with it. I don't know how much patience a lot of people have with it. I joked, I would make Rudiger the backup to Benzema before Hazard, just because it was super opportunistic. Because, well, I mean, look, who's the better dribbler now, Rudiger or Hazard? You tell me. So I mean, I don't know. It is what it is. This is just Hazard's life now at Real Madrid. I don't know. We're gonna try him at false 9. It's gonna be kind of like it was what has been before. He has some decent link up, but I don't think we want to get to the point where we're relying on him because Benzema's injured. So it is what it is. He's had no luck, and he hasn't helped himself there. I guess that Hazard story at Real Madrid.
Yeah, that's the reality. The reality is that whether we believe in him or not is irrelevant to an extent because he's going to be playing important minutes, I think, this season. He's by necessity. I mean, it's dwindling, and I'm not even sure if Asensio is even going to be in a team by the time this is all over. This transfer window's over. We'll see. He did have a good turn, I think. I was kind of writing the immediate reaction towards the last few minutes of the game, so I didn't really have many Hazard notes. But is there anything outside the penalty that we need to discuss that he did?
I mean, maybe the one you're talking about is when he ended up losing the ball afterwards. But if it's the same one initially, it was a good turn. I mean, I don't know. Let's see how many touches he actually had, because let's see, Eden Hazard had 8 touches and a 66.7% passing accuracy. So there you go.
Yeah, I don't really know what else to make of that. I didn't really watch it. Asensio had a pretty good chance towards the end that he put just wide. I don't really have too much else, to be honest. I think we talked about everything that needed to be talked about. Did you see the Rudiger thing that he does, or not Militao thing he does, where he falls on the ground and then bounces right back up?
I like the backflip handstand thing. That was
it's kind of
cool.
do we have enough of those to make a compilation? He did that last game too, I think, or no, Frankfurt. Maybe it was against Frankfurt.
I don't know, but you better get to it before Chiringuito does.
Yeah, they can have it. I'm not putting together a compilation. No, that's where we are in the podcast. We're talking about Militao bouncing up off the ground.
The last thing I'll say is, if you can find it, the video of Rudiger's run in Arabic commentary, and they just start laughing by the end of it, and it's just so funny.
I watched it. It's he starts laughing. He starts like chuckling right when he's receiving the way he's running, and he's receiving the pass from Fede, because he's got a unique running style. Right? He's a gem, man. I'm so happy we have him in our team. He's awesome. Yeah, I'm good. I'm done. I think I got all my points across. And there's always something we miss, but that's going to be the case no matter what podcast and how many hours we record. There's always something we miss, and someone's going to be screaming into their car while they're driving, asking us to address something that we didn't, we forgot to, but it is what it is. That's the way the Managing Madrid podcast cookie crumbles. So, thanks for doing the show with me, and I'm not sure what the podcast schedule is on, to be honest, for the next few days, but we definitely have, as you guys know, stuff lined up constantly, and hope you enjoy it.
So tomorrow, Real Madrid Femenino is playing Manchester City, and it is the second game of first round qualifier. So we have to win this. It's a 1-game match to be able to progress to round 2 of the qualifiers, where we will then play one team in 2-legged tie like we did last season versus Manchester City. So this is like a rematch in a sense. And so it's a must win tomorrow. And if we do get through, Manchester City could be our most difficult.
Okay, we lost due to connection issues, so I'm going to make the executive decision, just end the podcast here. Anyway, I will just follow up on what said. That game tomorrow is massive, and it's at 3 p.m. Eastern, and that is 9 p.m. Spanish European time. Central European time. So tune into that, and also Las Blancas will have you covered on the post-game podcast. That'll go up tomorrow night for free as well, and they'll also have plenty of post-game coverage for that game also on managingmadrid.com. Keep it locked, as always, on managingmadrid.com, and thank you guys for listening to the show. We will catch you on the next one. Thank you for listening, and have a great weekend. All right, before we wrap it up and send you along on your way, we wanted to give a quick shout out to our patrons over on patreon.com/managingmadrid, but we wanted to give a specific shout out to our $10 plus patrons, because if you pledge $10 or more, you get a specific shout out on the podcast, in addition to getting guaranteed responses to your questions. So shout out to Brandon Alvarez, Willie Reed, Wei Pering, Wamik Jamal, Umair Mahadi, Tyler Simon, Tobias Arroyo Botcher, Tarek Goktas, Talib Salhab, Tahmid Kalam, Sujai Wani, Sumanchu Singh, Shivam Tiwari, Sherry Sorial, Sheikh Atiri, Shamil, Shabaz Sharapov, Sergio Arispe, Santos Solorzano, Samuli Justin, Samir Z, Said Mahad, Sai Mohan Sasi Kumar, Rodrigo Balmaceda, Rishi D, Phoenix, Peter Powell, Paulo Fierro, Patrick Diafati, Oscar Barrera, Nico Laxo, Nicholas Zapatero Zubiare, Nicholas Moeller, Nick Ribeiro, Nelson Mazariego, Muxi Thengal, Mowgli, MJ Diego, Michael Zinberg, Marin Myrtle, Matthew Atkins, Martin Ridman, Logan Stahl, Leon Stavronakis, Kunal Tilakar, Crystal Glass, Kevin Rivera, Jose Cruz, John Fernandez, Jeff Thurston, Jason Fitz, Ian Marley, Graham Gerard, Gary Kohut, Frederick Rantakiro, Frederick Sundros, Faisal Hamdan, S.A. Davisito, Eloy Enriquez, Edward Sossman, Daniel Williams, Christian Toft, Krishna Costa, Charles Williams, Brendan Powers, Brandon Stevens, Ashik Bashar, Armand Gashi, Armando L, Antons Rudenko, Anirudh Singh, Alexis Saniceros, Al, Azaz Hussein, Adrian Rios, Adar Zalukovic, Adam Dorsey, Bella Chow, Varun, Ramtin Maghrur, Fabian Moreno, and Daniel Smith. We appreciate you guys so much. Thank you so much for your support. We love you all, and Hala Mari.